Brittney Griner is, in fact, a man. One of the videos that give us cause to say that is this video. It is from her Instagram stories from years and years ago. And when it comes to Instagram, they use a combination of like AI detection and plus manual surveyors to make sure that no explicit content ends up on the platform. So clearly whatever AI detection system was used when Brittney posted this and it stayed up for 106 weeks was not like, oh, this is a female chest, we have to take this down. Oftentimes, if breast cancer runs in a family, women will preemptively get like double mastectomies. And there are some great surgeons out there, don't get me wrong, but I don't see any scars on Brittney's chest that would be indicative of a double mastectomy or top surgery for gender transition.
Welcome back to Fast Break WNBA everyone. We're delving into a tale today that has generated significant discussions. Within the WNBA community, online rumors and reports concerning Sophie Cunningham have been circulating, with purported DNA evidence linked to Brittney Griner, sparking a flurry of responses from basketball enthusiasts. However, what is the true narrative underlying these assertions? What data is genuinely accessible, and why has this subject been created? So much focus. Join us as we dissect the specifics and go over everything you need to know about this evolving controversy. Now let's get started. The Seattle storm was brought on by a teenage girl's pro Sophie Cunningham sign owner to yell at her after being forced to put it away. The fans started crying, the post that has been. It's also not some exaggerated web rumor that has been making the rounds on basketball Twitter for the last 2 days. The headline misrepresents what actually happened courtside in Seattle. And that tells much more about this league right now than a single game score. If you find this article useful, think about subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Surprisingly, almost 90% of viewers haven't not yet subscribed. Even though it only takes a second and is free, it means the world to us. Have you already subscribed? Fantastic. I sincerely appreciate your help. Let's return to the video now.
Like that, and then she told us that we were effing insane,
and she's like, and she went like this.
Insane.
Yeah. She's like, you better stop this
and stop pulling
shit.
this. Yeah,
and
for you guys,
I hope God can save you.
This. Yeah.
She said, for you to come here and pull this shit.
Yeah.
She said the word.
Yeah.
Did she say effing insane or?
No, she
insane?
she said the word.
And nobody around you spoke up for you.
No.
So, I will say, Annalie, when I came over, you were in tears.
Yeah, I've never been yelled at like that. I mean, I've had people hate on me on the internet, but like it doesn't really affect me as much because it's just people online. But that just took me by surprise because I thought she was gonna be nice, and then she started like screaming at us.
A teenage girl carried a sign at a WNBA game. It didn't attack anyone. There was not a single player listed by name. It merely thanked Sophie Cunningham for her support of female athletes. According to the fan seated, a Seattle Storm co-owner came up to her mid-aim and told her to put it away. There, in front of an entirely sold-out crowd, security had been brought in by the time it was over, and the girl was in tears. Think about that for a moment. During a basketball game, an adult who has a child who loved to sign was sought by a stake in a professional sports team.
In that story with ESPN, you talk about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
Yeah. Do you see your advocacy on that, like taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect.
Do you think, I guess, along the line like that, it goes against perhaps, some people might say, hey, for the trans community, this could be something that could come back on us or be targeted against us. Like, how do you, I guess, view that sort of critique?
You know, like I said, I extend love, and I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone.
During an ESPN interview a few weeks ago, Sophie Cunningham was asked explicitly about protecting women's sports program. She didn't strive to dodge it or change it into something safer. She made it clear that She believes that young girls shouldn't have to compete against biological boys and that they should be kept protected in locker rooms. And that regardless of the outcome, she will always maintain that conviction.
How the left is completely intolerant and the actual hateful ones. This woman is not an owner of a basketball team. She's an owner of a left-wing, radical, political activist group that happens to play basketball. Because this team has endorsed Kamala Harris for president. They have promoted trans rights on their website and their merchandise. And clearly they hold a double standard and allow people to hold signs like this, but belittle young girls that support their sports remaining female. I don't expect them to do this, but I would really like to see the WNBA protect and stand up for fans just like these two young girls from hate and intolerance.
There was no name-calling in that response. Nobody was attacked, not even a rival or a colleague. It was just a simple, calm response to a simple question. As one could expect from someone who has thought it through rather than acting on impulse. But in this league, context hardly stays neutral for very long, so whether Sophie said it out loud. Either way, there was a name associated with that response.
I think it has been so fun. I played with BG for 6 years, and so I know her like the back of my hand. And as of late, she's been playing really good. She's been playing like OG Brittney. I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women. And I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
You already know who many supporters are if you've watched any of the Fever's games against the Connecticut Sun this season. Connected to such comments, Brittney Griner and Caitlin Clark have faced challenges on the court for the previous 3 seasons. Connection, unreported body checks and a bench scene from the previous season that fans are still arguing over. Frame by frame, and each time these two played, the refereeing manner was consistently different from the norm. Collectively, consequently, when Cunningham, the team's most vocal defender and Clark's closest teammate, declared that guys shouldn't participate in women's sports, the connections were made by the fan base without the need for a translator. The timing alone carried most of her message.
Some fans at the game booed Cunningham when she checked into the game. One Seattle Storm player even showed up pre-game wearing a shirt that read, "Trans rights are human rights." After the game, Storm coach Sonia Rahman was asked about the situation.
Seattle and this organization and Climate Pledge, we always want to be an area where people feel welcome coming into this building. I think we've always done a really good job with that. So I know our organization was, working closely with Climate Pledge and with security to just make sure that, everybody feels safe and included and welcome when they walk in this door. And from what I understand that.
The notion that Cunningham's comments were only aimed at her has never been challenged by Griner. She stated in a recent interview that she would never pick a different colleague to stand beside her. It was quite difficult to play against Cunningham a few days prior to this whole situation blowing up. Create what you desire from that, but the online reaction to Cunningham's comments wasn't modest, and the silence didn't last long.
Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing thinkers across the country is...
In about 48 hours, it was everyplace.USA Today picked up the article. The next morning, parts of it were included in several ESPN programs. Fox News gave it its own national segment. Regardless of the league's reaction, the White House press secretary formally declared that Cunningham was on the right side of an issue that most Americans already agree upon. That is a noteworthy reaction to a truthful answer given by a WNBA role player to a single question during a feature interview. That is a national conversation that goes well beyond basketball. Moreover, Sophie never asked for any of it to happen in the way that, yes, it did.
Applaud her enough. This notion that you're hating on the trans community because you are not a proponent of them participating in female sports is utterly ridiculous. Sophie Cunningham said every word right on the money. There's no hate involved. There's only love we're talking about. But what happened to loving girls who are born biologically as girls? What about their rights? What about fairness associated to them? Leah Thomas, I'm going to keep bringing that name up. 400 plus in the world competing as a male, transitions to female, and he was number 1. If we're gonna act like transitioning from male to female doesn't involve an advantage for that trans athlete, I have nothing to say to you. You're not exercising.
Since that distinguishes her from almost every other athlete, people ought to pay more attention to what she did next. Who has ever encountered this circumstance? Reporters went back to her a few days later, clearly thinking that she would clarify it, walk it back, or soften it into something less specific and threatening. She didn't do any of that. She said that she doesn't dislike anyone and that she genuinely believes there is room for everyone, saying it almost exactly. However, she won't change her actual beliefs just because someone asked her to. That's not how one goes after controversy to attract notice. That person was asked a reasonable question and provided an honest response, and refused to act as though she didn't mean it when the time came.
Out last week and talks about her beliefs, which I do think is very rare, especially being as young as she is, and quite honestly being brave to share something she knows is going to get picked apart a million times, and then standing by it. That's refreshing, especially from a young woman.
And that brings us to Seattle, where the entire issue evolved from an internet disagreement to something that occurred to a real youngster playing a real game in front of real people who saw it happen in real time. The Fever's game against the Storm, on paper, should have been limited to basketball on Tuesday night. A small crowd gathered outside the Climate Pledge venue prior to tip-off. While some are there to actively support Cunningham, others are there to promote a Washington Bala question that has been gathering support for parity in girls' athletics across the entire state. Some wore clothing with the some had signs, while others had XX and XY symbols. No specific Storm player was the target of it. It was about more than one. Remarks made by a WNBA player regarding Cunningham and the broader conversation she had entered weeks prior, and a policy debate that has been evolving for a while.
Covering your sign.
Two of those fans came into the arena and took a seat courtside while holding a banner that said, "Thank you to Cunningham for advocating for women." Brandy Cruz of Undivided Pod, who spoke candidly, alleged that a woman had approached them in the middle of the game and called them completely mad, then had security remove them from their seats. The audience eventually identified the woman as Celeste Cotton, the minority owner of the Storm. One of them asserted that the rate at which a basketball game night became violent. The private conversation brought her to tears even before the fight was over.
There's signs that said like, we love Sophie, like, thank you Sophie for speaking up. And so we were holding up, just watching the game. Again, like, we were being super great. We hadn't said anything to anyone else. We were being super respectful. We were just holding our signs and cheering for both teams. And this lady, older lady, comes up to us. And she comes up to us, and at first I think she's gonna be nice, and then she asks like, what are you guys doing? Something like that. And then it was like, Jesus loves everyone. That's what she told us. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I'm religious. Like, I know. Like, I know.
Nice.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, I hope Jesus can forgive you for what sin you've done. And like, something like that. And then she told us that we were effing insane.
And she's like, and she went like this.
Insane. Yeah.
She's like, you better stop this.
And stop pulling this. Yeah.
Now think about the asymmetry that permeates everything. A group of individuals outside the arena representing a collection of different perspectives on this specific issue. Furthermore, none of the group members went to the other side of the protest to give them any information. She is totally right in that. Quotation. No one in the crowd is protesting that she shouldn't be allowed to enter her own arena while wearing anything she wants, but a teenage fan was secretly confronted by a co-owner of the home team. In front of thousands of fans, a player on the visiting team was given a thank you sign and instructed to put it away.
Yeah. We are Women Are Real. I had this crazy idea on Thursday that I wanted to support Sophie. We've gone all around California supporting female athletes, and I just said, we can go to Seattle and we can support female athletes. And Brandy was right there, ready to help us. And thank you all for showing up. We just have simple belief that women are adult human females, and women deserve their own female-only sports and spaces, especially prisons and domestic violence shelters. Yes. We are 180.
This is the obvious thing you should ask yourself. A political statement made by a piece of clothing on the opposite side of the audience only gives that same issue a standing ovation, but a sign that only says ownership will yell at a fan simply for standing up for girls. What does that actually reveal? What do you think of this organization's present situation? In actuality, the placard wasn't rude. It didn't target any Storm players, as it also failed to accomplish that. Actually, only Sophie Cunningham agreed with that placard. Regardless of their beliefs, everyone who attends a Storm game should feel welcome, according to Jenny Gilder. In a statement, the majority owner apologized and acknowledged that a co-owner had made comments to 2 fans. Make a note of everything in the statement that was purposefully left out. There was no mention of Catan. There was no explanation of what was actually said to the fans at the time. Additionally, it never discussed if why a co-owner felt entitled or whether there would be any real accountability beyond a skillfully written press release. To initially approach paying consumers over a sign.it sounded exactly like the kind of comment meant to quietly erase a challenging story.it was not intended to adequately address the events that took place on that concourse.
Yeah, look, I literally just left CrossFit, don't have any recording material here, but breaking news, Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton was fined and suspended from attending the next 5 home games of the Seattle Storm, following the incident with Fever fans last night, in which she made a comment about one of their players' supporters. That came directly from the league. So that's the latest on this developing story. So there it is.
And that's the essence of the whole affair. When all the background noise is eliminated, Sophie didn't deserve any of this. Cunningham, she answered a question honestly, defended it twice under duress. I then saw a teenage admirer treated like a threat simply for expressing agreement with her in public, during a basketball game. A team owner shouldn't yell at someone because of a sign or a garment. Stop completely, whichever side of the dispute. Cunningham supporters were the only ones impacted, which tells you all you need to know about how tolerant some parts of this league are of bigotry.
To stand 10 toes down, and Sophie Cunningham was quoted as saying, I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Megan Rapinoe's such a fucking bird. Like, she's such a fucking bird. Biological men should not be playing in sports with biological men, period. End of discussion. It shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be a cause for debate. It shouldn't be labeled transphobia because you don't want to have to compete with people who were born biological men and have biological advantages that women will never have and never be able to have for the rest of their life. I always ask the question, why do we never see like biological women transitioning to be men and playing in men's sports? Why don't we ever see that? Why is it always biological men transitioning to women and coming over to play with?
Furthermore, this did not happen in a vacuum, which helps explain how it has spread.it took place around a week ago. Following her own comments regarding another WNBA player who was quietly benched with suspiciously lower minutes, the league as a whole started to take notice of defending women's sports. This is a silent rotation adjustment. There was a vague sentence there, nothing official, nothing that can survive a thorough investigation if you ask for. In a locker room, there is never a word that needs to be said out loud, just enough subtle pressure is positioned to ensure that the message is understood by all other league viewers.
Trans people live. Nobody has a problem with trans people and what they do on their own time. It's just in regards to what Sophie said is when it comes to sports. Women, biological women should play sports against biological women. Men should play against men because the simple reason for it is because scientifically just men are stronger, faster, bigger.
Therefore, when online users start to wonder why the WNBA seems to accept nearly every point of view different from Cunningham's because of what happened in Seattle, that question keeps coming up. Her comments weren't particularly harsh. The goal of protecting girls' sports and ensuring fair competition on the court is by no means a peripheral perspective. According to the survey, most Americans do, in fact, agree with her on this specific issue. It's because if you mention it out loud, you seem to become a target in various rooms connected to this league. Calmly, truthfully, and without ever mentioning anyone by name, she has already appeared in front of reporters twice on camera. Clearly hoping for a different reaction, she will repeat herself verbatim instead of offering anyone a milder, safer version of her true beliefs, whether it's a member of the coaching staff covertly cutting your court time or a co-owner walking up to a grieving woman and instructing her to put her sign away in front of a crowded arena. The primary question that hangs over all of this is no longer Sophie.it concerns if the league and each of its teams will keep treating her fans differently than everyone else, or if Wednesday's skillfully an apology was enough to make one embarrassing headline quietly disappear before the inevitable next one appears in a different location.